Have you ever been in a conversation in English where you knew exactly what you thought, but the moment you needed to politely say, I disagree, your mind just went blank?
Oh, Mia, that feeling. Absolutely. It's like your brain has the perfect opinion ready, but your mouth just says, good.
Exactly. And that pause feels so long, right? You end up agreeing to something ridiculous just to keep the conversation moving.
I think every English learner, especially those around A2 or B1 level, has faced that. It's the great communication hurdle.
So, welcome everyone to the English Blend. I'm Mia.
And I'm Leo.
Today, we are tackling exactly that feeling, expressing agreement and disagreement. But we're not just giving you phrases. We're looking at why those phrases are hard to use quickly.
We're going to talk about how to stop overthinking and start communicating. We want you to sound natural, friendly, and just get your point across without stressing about perfect grammar.
That's the key. So, grab your coffee or your tea and let's get started.
Perfect. Now, when we talk about agreement and disagreement, we are really talking about fluency, aren't we?
We totally are. And this is where we need to define two very important words for learners: fluency versus accuracy.
This is a classic conflict. Learners often think they need 100% accuracy, meaning zero mistakes in grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation, to be considered good speakers.
Right. They are aiming for perfection. They want every verb tense to be correct, every preposition to be flawless. That's accuracy. And accuracy is important, of course.
But if you prioritize accuracy too much, what happens? You pause, you translate, you think, wait, is this past perfect continuous or just simple past? And boom, the conversation has moved on without you.
You hit a wall. That mental block stops the natural flow.
And that's where fluency comes in. Fluency is communication. It means you can keep the conversation going. You can express your thoughts clearly enough that the listener understands your main idea.
Even if you use the wrong preposition or mix up he and she, if the listener understands, you are fluent. You successfully got your point across.
Think of fluency as flowing water and accuracy as perfectly shaped ice cubes. Ice cubes are precise, but water flows freely. We need to be flowing water in conversation.
I love that analogy. It's about the speed and consistency of the flow, not the crystalline structure of every single word.
So let's bring this back to our topic, agreement and disagreement. Why does focusing on accuracy make these moments so difficult?
Because expressing disagreement politely often requires slightly more complex structures or, at the very least, quick reactions. It's easy to say yes. It takes effort to say, I see your point, but I'm not sure I agree with the timeline.
You need speed. You need a pre-made chunk of language, not the ability to build a perfect sentence from scratch in 3 seconds.
Exactly. If you are thinking, I must use the subjunctive mood here to disagree politely, you've already lost the argument.
That's the real problem. Grammar blocks fluency.
It really does. Grammar is essential for clarity, but when you are speaking spontaneously, the conscious effort to check grammar rules slows you down immensely.
It's the difference between driving a car and studying the engine manual while driving. You need to know the basics of driving, but you can't pause traffic to analyze the transmission fluid.
That's such a good point. A lot of A2 and B1 learners have studied tons of grammar. They might know the rules better than a native speaker does.
But when it's time to speak, the fear of making an error, the accuracy obsession, causes hesitation. That hesitation breaks fluency.
And hesitation means you might miss the chance to offer your opinion, which is often the entire point of the conversation.
We call that self-monitoring. You're constantly listening to yourself, checking for mistakes, and correcting them before they leave your mouth. It's exhausting.
And it definitely prevents you from sounding natural.
When we speak naturally, we use fillers, we repeat ourselves, and yes, we make minor grammatical errors even as native speakers.
Speaking of natural errors, I have a short story about this. It happened to a friend of mine when he first moved here.
Ooh, tell us. A cultural note moment.
So he was at a meeting at work and they were discussing a new project deadline. He thought the deadline was impossible and he needed to strongly disagree.
High pressure situation.
Very high pressure. He wanted to say, "That's ambitious and I don't think we can meet that target."
A perfectly polite, professional disagreement.
But what came out, because he was nervous and rushing, was, "I think that deadline is very not possible." And then he added, "It will be failure."
Oh dear, not the most elegant phrasing.
No, but here's the critical part. Everyone in the room understood exactly what he meant.
They understood his meaning even though the sentence structure was non-standard. He got his point across.
Exactly. He didn't say it will be a failure or it is impossible or we cannot meet it, but the communication was successful. The meaning was transferred.
So the grammar mistake was not the end of the world.
Not at all. In fact, because he spoke quickly and clearly with conviction, he sounded stronger than if he had paused for 30 seconds to construct a perfect conditional sentence.
This highlights our main message. Prioritize communication over grammatical perfection. The goal is to be understood, not to win a grammar trophy.
Okay, so we've defined the problem. How do we fix it? How do we train our brains to stop building sentences word by word and start flowing naturally, especially when we need to express agreement or strong disagreement?
Time for our practical tips. We have 3 to 5 real, actionable steps you can start using today to boost your speaking fluency.
Tip number 1, and this is crucial, massive listening.
Massive listening. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's actually the most passive work you can do.
You need to expose your brain to English constantly, not just studying rules, but hearing the rhythm, the intonation, and most importantly, the chunks of language that native speakers use.
Because when we hear native speakers agreeing or disagreeing, we don't hear them applying grammar rules. We hear them saying, "you bet," or "I'm with you 100%," or "that's a fair point, but..."
Those are all pre-made structures. If you listen massively to podcasts, shows, YouTube, your brain starts storing these chunks automatically.
It's like learning how to drive a stick shift versus an automatic. If you know the common phrases automatically, you don't have to think about shifting gears every time you talk.
And this leads perfectly into tip number 2. Learn and use chunks, not just individual words.
A chunk is a group of words that often go together and carry a specific meaning. For example, instead of learning point, get, across, and your separately, you learn the whole unit, get your point across.
When you learn phrases like "you're absolutely right," or "I couldn't agree more," or "I beg to differ," you are learning tools ready for immediate use.
Let's look at disagreement again. Many learners try to construct a soft disagreement, like, "I think your idea is maybe wrong," which is grammatically simple but sounds too direct.
But if they learn the chunk, "I see your point, however," they sound instantly more polite and fluent, and they didn't have to build that 5-word phrase themselves. It was already installed.
Think of agreement chunks. Totally. You nailed it. That's spot on. These are fast, effective, and require zero grammatical thinking.
And practice those chunks out loud. Don't just write them down. Say them with the right emotional tone. Say "that's spot on" like you really mean it.
Okay, tip number 3, and this one is vital for overcoming the hesitation wall, the 3-second rule.
The famous 3-second rule. Tell us about it, Mia.
When someone asks you a question or makes a statement that requires your response, you have 3 seconds to start speaking. Any longer, and your brain starts engaging the grammar police.
If you wait 4, 5, or 6 seconds, you're not trying to find the right word anymore. You're trying to construct the perfect sentence. And that's when you hit a wall.
It doesn't matter what you say in those first 3 seconds. You can start with a filler. "Well, let me see," or "that's interesting."
Yes, fillers are your best friends in Fluency. You know, right? Exactly. They buy you crucial milliseconds while your brain is catching up.
If you are practicing expressing disagreement and you can't form the perfect structure, just say, "I'm not sure," within 3 seconds. And then the rest can follow, imperfectly, but fluently.
The pressure is off once you start talking. Once the flow begins, it's much easier to keep going.
Tip number 4, don't self-correct immediately.
Oh, this is tough for high accuracy learners. We've all seen people stop mid-sentence to fix a tiny error.
It completely destroys fluency. If you say, she went to the store and bought he a coffee, and you realized you used he instead of him, let it go.
The person understood you. The mistake was not the end of the world. Keep flowing. You can fix the error in the next conversation, but not during this one.
Remember, your primary goal is to get your point across. A small error is a very small price to pay for successful communication.
And our 5th tip may be the most important mindset shift. Focus on intent, not form.
This goes back to our friend who said, it will be failure. His intent was clear. The deadline won't work. His form, grammar, was messy.
Intent beats form every time in real-life communication. If you're ordering coffee and you say, I want coffee, black, they know what you mean. You achieved your intent.
Don't let the need for perfect form stop you from achieving your communication intent.
So, to summarize the practical side, listen a lot, use chunks, speak within 3 seconds, ignore small errors, and focus on intent.
Now, let's dive into some specific language. We promised 2 to 3 useful idioms and phrases, but we've actually integrated them into the discussion. Get your point across, hit a wall, and not the end of the world.
They are phrases we use naturally, right? Let's quickly review how they fit.
When we talk about getting your point across, we mean successfully conveying your message. If you are fluent, you can get your point across even if your grammar is weak.
And hitting a wall is that feeling of reaching a barrier or blockage, usually mental, where you just stop making progress, often because you are overthinking or over-monitoring your speech.
And finally, when you make a mistake, we remind ourselves it's not the end of the world. It means the consequences are minor. You don't need to panic.
Fantastic. Now let's move to some specific quick-fire phrases for expressing agreement and expressing disagreement that our listeners can start chunking immediately.
Let's start with easy, strong agreement. Forget just yes or I'd agree.
Try totally. Short, strong, very common in casual settings.
Or you bet. That's a slightly more enthusiastic way of saying I completely agree. Use this when you are excited about the topic.
Another good one is that's spot on. This means you are exactly right. Imagine you're in a cafe discussing a movie and your friend makes a perfect summary. That's spot on.
And if you want to sound very formal, perhaps in a meeting, you can use the classic junk, I couldn't agree more. It sounds negative, but it means you agree 100%.
Now for the harder ones. Disagreement. We want to be polite, right? We don't want to just say, no, you're wrong.
Never say that, unless you are having a very casual argument with a friend about pizza toppings, maybe.
We need softeners. Start by acknowledging their view first. Chunk these phrases.
I see your point, but this is perfect. It shows respect and prepares them for your counter-argument.
Or try, I'm not sure about that. This is softer than, I disagree. It indicates doubt rather than a direct contradiction.
Another excellent chunk for more professional settings is, with all due respect, I have to disagree. That phrase acknowledges the other person's status or idea while still asserting your own opinion. It's polite and clear.
And what if someone makes a proposal and you want to offer an alternative instead of a straight rejection?
You can use, what if we looked at it this way? Or perhaps another approach would be, again, using those pre-made chunks makes you sound fluent and confident.
Let's run a quick example. Imagine we are discussing studying methods. Leo says, I think the best way to study is to read the textbook cover to cover 3 times. Mia, your turn. Express disagreement politely using a chunk.
I see your point, but I think for active learning, reading 3 times might be inefficient. Perhaps another approach would be to use flashcards and massive listening.
Perfect. You disagreed, but you flowed naturally, used a filler, and offered an alternative. You prioritize communication, which is fluency.
And I didn't pause for 10 seconds to check if I should use would be or will be. I just used the chunk I had ready.
That is the power of focusing on fluency and using chunks of language. You sound much more confident.
We need to remember that these agreement and disagreement chunks are powerful because they save you time. They stop you from having to invent a new polite structure every time.
If you have that spot on ready, you don't have to think, I think what you said is correct and I agree with your statement.
The longer the phrase you construct from scratch, the higher the chance you will hit a wall mentally, and the more likely you will stop and overthink the grammar.
And remember the core goal, getting your point across. If you manage to communicate your opinion on the matter, then your communication was a success.
We also want to emphasize, don't wait for perfection before you use these phrases in real life. Use them today.
Start simple. When your friend suggests a movie, don't just say no. Say, I'm not sure about that one. Or, I see your point, but I prefer comedies.
Practice makes permanent, not perfect. You want the fluent, natural way of speaking to become permanent.
And don't be afraid if you mess up the grammar slightly when you are trying to be fluent. If you accidentally say, I agree with her opinion, but he is wrong about the timing, it's not the end of the world. Keep talking.
We really hope this session helps you move past that fear of speaking and into real continuous conversation. Fluency is about moving forward.
It's about accepting that mistakes are just part of the journey. Native speakers make mistakes too.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of today's episode on expressing agreement and disagreement and the secret to achieving fluency while doing it.
First, fluency is communication, not perfection. Prioritize getting your meaning across over having perfect accuracy.
Second, we identified that over-monitoring grammar is the main reason learners hit a wall and stop speaking.
Third, our practical tips included massive listening for input, learning language chunks instead of single words, and practicing the 3-second rule to force immediate response.
Fourth, remember our key phrases. Use chunks like you bet for agreement and I see your point, but for polite disagreement.
And finally, if you make an error, remind yourself it's not the end of the world. Keep going so you can get your point across. Start practicing these chunks in your daily life, even if you're just talking to yourself in the mirror. It helps build that immediate recall.
Absolutely. Daily practice is everything. Listen, 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 and then speak, speak, speak.
That was a great talk. We covered a lot of ground today.
Yes, it was really insightful. Thank you all for joining us for the English Blend.
Next time, we are going to dive into the surprisingly complex world of small talk, how to keep those short, quick conversations going without falling silent.
Sounds like fun. Don't forget to check the show notes for a list of all the agreement and disagreement phrases we discussed today.
Until next time.
Happy practicing!
Yes, see you in the next episode of the English Blend.